Hey everybody, this is Perch. I got an interesting question that I think is hitting the nail on the head. And the question was, hey, in this argument over we need to go back to the past, or we need to chase this new market, this new kind of, I don't know what you call this market of readers who are into very different things. Uh, what happens if either one, is basically if one of them was to win, would it be good for comics? Would it actually be enough business for comics to thrive and survive? And the mail in the question went on with the person basically speculating that no, it wouldn't. And you're right, it wouldn't. This is the kind of the aggravating part of the entire argument. It's that uh, for better or worse, no matter what you think, if we got the kind of what I would call the classic comic market, right? We just said, okay, we're going to change course and we're going to put out content that the people who love comics in the 90s, kind of the collectors, those people, we're going to just put that out and everything is going to be that. And we're going to really cater to that market, which in fairness, I don't think people are actually asking for that. And I'll get into more of that in a minute. It wouldn't be big enough. We know it wouldn't be big enough. We do have to. It's not a controversial or strange statement to say that we do need to get kids interested in comics. We need to have new readers coming into it. You always have to have new buyers coming into the market. But at the same time, and I think this is the part that it always feels like the business model kind of breaks down if we say, all right, we're going to expand to this new, diverse, different audience. The challenge is the audience that they're often talking about is not diverse. It's diverse by name, but not diverse by action. When you take I don't know, a Steven Universe type art style, and you start applying it to everything, and you do a lot of comics about people eating food and all the rest. You're just creating a new segment, and if you push everything into that segment, you haven't grown your audience. You've just gone from point A to point B, and we know that that audience is not big enough to sustain comics either. It's not bigger. In fact, it's almost definitely smaller than the old collector's audience, because it doesn't, the collector's audience at least can credit itself with people who will buy the comic whether it's good or bad because they just want to complete their runs. That is true. It's not necessarily healthy. I don't think anybody should look at that business and say, yay, we've got people who are buying things just because they feel they have to. That's not a good place to be, but it is a true factor. uh, when I say originally, when a lot of this conversation happened, and I remember it wasn't Comics Pro. I think it was just one of the luncheons. I think it was at the New York City Comic Con. It may have been Baltimore, one of the other places. But I think it was new. I no no maybe it was Chicago. Sorry, now I'm just trying to pull memories out of my brain. But it was at least eight years ago. Further, wait, my daughter wasn't born. It was at least 10 years ago. That was embarrassing. This entire last 20 seconds, very embarrassing. Anyway, I remember there being some talk at this little luncheon about how we need to diversify the comic buying audience. And I remember thinking, yes, finally somebody's talking about this. I agree, we do. Because to me, diversify meant expand. It meant grow. It meant go find additional audiences and get some comics into their hands. It meant, put some thought into how we expand our market. Which, in fairness, that was where the conversation was headed at this luncheon. That was what they were talking about. But over time, that kind of morphed away from expand into change. It morphed from, hey, we have these existing customers, but they are getting older, and we need to get these new customers. And so we need to start marketing toward them. And then what felt like nobody really proceeded with a clear strategy. It's like the buzzword of, hey, there's money in this new diverse audience, go. And then everybody just went. It's like, hey, not all of you should go. Some of you should go. Some of you should start testing the waters over here. Others should stabilize the existing business. Others should go find a third or fourth market. Others should go pursue international, and others should pursue digital. Like everybody, like this is a cohesive market strategy of lots of people all pushing in different directions to see what will stick. But what is very true of comics, or I think something I keep running into over and over again, is whenever there's some hot, flashy new thing, everybody simultaneously just starts jumping after it without really understanding, is it real? Is there money? What's it going to take to get there? Do you suddenly change your entire business model over? You don't. It's kind of like YA. You hear a lot of that. It's like, hey, there's money in YA. Everybody go and start publishing stuff for YA. Except the thing is, most YA books, most YA content is not selling. And that is a factual statement. Again, you can back it up through BookScan, through Amazon, through any number of places. Most YA content fails. The majority of it fails. However, a couple very specific examples do amazing, way better than traditional comics, or in some cases, traditional books. So what do we learn from that? If you could do it really, really well, if you can find a market, if you can get it, then great. But that's kind of true of everything. It's true of comics. It's true of YA. It's true of all ages. It's true of nonfiction. Everything. If you manage to be the market leader in those segments, you're going to do amazing. But not everyone gets to be the market leader. And if you're running a publishing house, if you're running a comic book company, if you're running any of these things, the trick is don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's an analogy. It's a piece of advice that's old. Like everybody knows that one. You learn that. I mean, that had to predate cars, right? Because who carries around eggs in a basket? Like nobody does that. But yet, comics seems obsessed with chasing whatever current hot trends on people's minds, with no real thought or disregard to the rest of the market. Whereas being successful is actually pretty simple. It's called, figure out where your money's coming from, shore up the base, expand into new territories slowly and carefully, be obsessive about data. One of the things that one of the companies that's worth kind of looking into, kind of how they do what they do, is Amazon. And I don't mean the package shipping group. I mean more on the technology side. There's a lot of published papers, and one of the attributes that they look for with their people are obsessive about data. Means always be looking for proof, for examples, for evidence, for what's happening. You want your decisions to be based on data. And I'm seeing the response to these sales videos I've done. It feels like that resonates with some of you as well. Like, show me the data. If we look at the data, we can make good decisions. If you make the great part about trusting data and being very, very obsessive about getting as much data as you can is that when you have it, you feel way more comfortable about your decisions, about the choices you make. You feel a level of safety and security. You no longer feel like you're making a guess or a shot in the dark. You feel like you're actually managing your business. And this is why, and I've harped on it a few times, why comic publishers seem adverse to fully embracing data. I made this video. I think it resonated with some of you guys as well because you pulled it out of what I said. I've had some people in the comic publishers say, "Oh, look at this guy. He's a nerd." That's been the response to some of the videos I put out where there's a sales nerd. Look at this nerd talking about numbers. Why don't you just enjoy the comic? It's like, you could do both. You could actually enjoy the comic and still be curious about how it's doing in the market and want to learn about it and want to see how it's done. I mean, yeah, aren't people curious? Like, aren't you curious about how, Watchmen is doing in comparison to before Watchmen, in comparison to Rorschach, in comparison to Doomsday Clock? I mean, like, doesn't that interest you to know how these different efforts succeeded? And you're a customer, you're on the outside. If you're a publisher, God, you should really want to know that. But the key here to the original question is no. No, if comics just retreated and said, we're just going to go for what we did in the 80s and just did that, it wouldn't be enough. The business wouldn't be successful. Now, keep in mind, the other factor in here is if simultaneously you introduce the newsstand and suddenly comics are on the newsstand and you're selling them everywhere, then definitely things are going to improve. But frankly, if you had the increased distribution of the newsstand for anything, whether they're social justice comics or 80s retro comics or anything, if you take your distribution and you move it out of the direct market to 20x hell, not even that, like 200x the locations, 200 times the locations of where it's at right now, it's going to sell better, whatever it is you're doing in that comic. So if you can improve the distribution, that is a key to success. But if all you do is say, you know what, the kind of the more indie feel, the social feel, the slice of life type stories, this has been a failure, we're just going to do what we did in the 80s, go, it still wouldn't be enough. You need to grow the market. And to grow the market, it means doing more than one thing. And that may be hard for some people to hear, but take heart in the other side of that coin, which is moving everything over to slice of life, very, very, the same kind of art style. I mean, the thing that drives me nuts about the what they call quote unquote the Cal art style is that there's no diversity to it. It's the same thing over and over and over. It's the same character design. It's the same stuff. I hate that. That's what drives me absolutely nuts about it. If there was just a show or two shows that use that art style, it'd be great. I think Hilda, which is a show on Netflix, uses sort of some of that style quite well. It fits the show. It looks good. Quality is great. No problems. I never got into Steven Universe, but hey, if they want to make that show good, go for it. But when you have all the shows using that same style, then it feels very uncreative. And I think, when you have a creative industry like comics or like, TV or whatever, and it's a creative industry, and then you have a lot of things doing the exact same thing, whether it's the kind of stereotypical Rob Liefeld extreme 90s style, or whether it's the Cal art style, or whatever it happens to be, people tend to be annoyed with it. Not everything should look the same. That's kind of the whole point of creative endeavors. You don't make everything look exactly the same. I guarantee you would not see the amount of complaints about the this one art style if it was used sparingly, or if it was the signature look of a couple shows and not all of them. It wouldn't be complained about if you didn't take shows that had a very established art style, like they did for Thundercats, and you crammed it into this new art style. People wouldn't complain about it. Now, that doesn't mean the product isn't good. Maybe you love Thundercats, but you got to appeal to a wide audience. That's the point of the original question, which I think is a good one, and how you succeed in comics. You do have to appeal to a wide audience, but saying we need to diversify our audience means increase. You've got to go back to what I thought when I first heard it. You need to expand. Diversity in your audience means expansion. It shouldn't mean subtraction. And I think people get that fouled up a lot. They say diversity, but what they really mean is, we're going to market to this one audience over here. And it's like, but that one audience over there is not big enough to support your product, and you're going to fail. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think comics, where should they land? Just right back where they were? Go full steam into this other audience, or like me, do you think, hey, let's get a lot of different efforts going at once and then track them, analyze them, manage them, get some data about what's working and what isn't, expand. The goal is expand. That's to me. I don't feel like I said anything of any intelligence here. Like, so much of this stuff feels like super common sense. Like, hey, to sell more comics, you need to sell more comics. And I don't know. Is this something people need to hear? I don't know. The data suggests yes. Thanks for listening.